So I was kind of waiting for the perfect time to make the videos. I was looking up statistics and wanted to do a whole ooh who layout about mental health because and mental health awareness, and particularly talking about my mental health struggles and how I actually um am recover I have recovered, and that I'm actually rewiring my brain when it deals to certain triggers, as they will call them, actions and behaviors that are associated with those triggers and associated with those diagnoses. Love my glasses. And I totally was kind of waiting for the perfect time and all of that. And I just realized today that there is no perfect time. And if I keep continue to wait for the perfect time, when I feel in the perfect mood and everything, that it will never get done. My story will never get told. And the people that need to hear it will never hear it. So I just wanted to talk about um, the first thing that I knew that I had even before I was diagnosed with it, and it's PTSD. It's post traumatic stress syndrome. And generally, just from my experience, a lot of people walk around with PTSD, diagnosed and undiagnosed, and generally, drugs are just thrown at it. And when I first started going to my group therapies about it, you are taught to recognize your triggers and then just stay away from them. That is what I was taught during therapy, group sessions, and personal therapy. They just threw me some drugs and then was like, stay away from the triggers. Don't be triggered. Don't be triggered. Like, don't be triggered. And then that was kind of odd because with PTSD, so my PTSD is related to, or should I say, my PTSD was, not is, because I'm not triggered by those things anymore. And I would say I don't have PTSD anymore. So it was related to several things. One was abandonment that I felt from both of my parents, as I was raised by my great aunt for most of my life. And also the fact that in my early years, there was sexual trauma. So we have sexual trauma, we have abandonment, and then also to the fact that nobody in my family talked about it. So that made me feel I can't even think about the word, but kind of invisible. So I guess it was just a general feeling of abandonment and unwantedness. That's trauma. And so having that and nobody talked to me about it, and I was in my 30s when I first saw a when I first did therapy, group and personal. I was in my 30s. I wasn't It wasn't until I was 26 when I actually got on medication. And so um everything was traumatic for me. Like everything. I was afraid of boys, I was afraid of men. There was things I couldn't watch on TV. Um and then, things I couldn't watch on TV, like stuff people would say if you yelled at me. Um just all kinds of stuff was trauma. Everything was a trigger. Like men in general were triggers. Triggers, triggers, triggers. Being left at home at like 16, 17, doing things by myself at an appropriate age was a trigger for me. I remember the first time um I remember like riding the bus to school by myself. And I was like, oh my God, I can't do this because I got to transfer buses. It was a trigger. It was a trigger in my 20s, like going to the airport by myself. I would have anxiety. I had an anxiety attack. Mind you, I'm 20 with an 8-month-old baby, and trigger, 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 trigger. Like everything was a trigger. Not being in control of a intimate or a romantic relationship, trigger. Getting too close to men, trigger. So certain, yeah, pretty much all movies was a trigger. Intimacy was a trigger. So I walked around most of my life with this trigger. And so when I got into therapy at 30, then they describe the triggers to you and stuff like that. I realized, like, how do you avoid triggers? So then I didn't go anywhere because they were like, everything is a trigger, avoid your trigger. So I'm thinking like, well, everything triggers me. Everything triggers me. So where could I go? So mind you, based upon that, there's building blocks to other stuff that triggered off, but we're just going to keep it with the PTSD. So I would isolate for like 6 to 8 months out the year type of thing. And and then so when I started taking the medication, I would go out, but because I wasn't triggered, because I was numb, I couldn't feel anything. So I had been taking medication for 15 years, from 26 until I stopped last year. This in March, actually, last year of March of last year. So 15 years, I walked around zombified. Like, I just didn't feel anything. I pretended to feel stuff, but I really didn't. I didn't really feel anything. Only a few people who were really close to me, like, could actually see the difference, and everybody else was just like, "Oh my gosh, she's just no." I really wasn't feeling anything at all. And so, oh yeah, I faked emotions and everything. I just was faking the whole. Just it's easy to put on masks and fake stuff. Um, but now I'm in my honest feelings, so I cry real tears. I'm really happy. I'm really sad. I'm really regular. I'm like, hey, I get to feel everything, which is great. And so, when I started taking the medication, I did not feel anything. So I was like, oh, this therapy must be working. It must be working. And because none of this stuff is triggering me. I get all those other things, all those other ways. And then I realized it was not, it did not, I was not feeling anything. And what happened to me last year is when I decided to stop taking the medication was because I realized all of the side effects that the medication was bringing up, and after 15 years, my symptoms were not getting better. They were actually getting worse, and then my body could feel it. So I decided last year to detox from the medication, and I'm literally changing my whole life. And I found this documentary on PTSD. I love documentaries. Love, 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 love documentaries. And it was a documentary about how a veteran got over PTSD with microdosing. Now, I didn't use the microdosing to get over my PTSD, but I did do a lot of meditation and journal work. And during this process too, I was also not only detoxing from the psych meds, but also from tobacco. So I was detoxing from both of those, and I knew that I had to detox from both of those at the same time, and I couldn't use nicotine as a crutch for any of the emotions that I felt. So I had to detox from that. And so what I actually did was to help ease me into feeling and emotions and dealing with what actually triggered my PTSD was I used hemp. Not cannabis, not THC. There's no THC in it. It's just hemp. They grow it, you dry it, you smoke it. It's a natural herb and helps with detox and stuff like that. So I had hemp smoke. So I used that, and then I would meditate, and then I would actually think about situations that triggered my PTSD. And I journaled, and I had long conversations, honest conversations with me. I cried a lot. And then I actually had to change my diet as well, because again, certain things and certain foods and stuff don't work with me. Don't do that. Use it as a crutch. All type of things. And so, what I realized it was that. And I looked at my behaviors, and so I took accountability for my behaviors, for like, not wanting to do things by myself because I felt abandoned. A lot of things. I just didn't want to do things by myself because I felt abandoned, and I felt like I could not. Okay, that like separation just went to abandonment for me. Like, it just went that far. Like it'd be like, oh, okay, no, I'm going up here. I'm like, no, you're just abandoning me. Like it was just that deep. And so now I realize that, and like separation is healthy. You really shouldn't be around somebody 24 hours a day. Except no, like breaks are good. I didn't need to be around. Even like with my kids, like I felt um like my older son, I felt like he abandoned me when I was like, you just abandoned me. But again, that was not his issue. That was my issue. He was secure in our relationship, and I had given him the tools that he needed to go away and still be secure. And I didn't even see it like that. I just felt like I was being abandoned. Why? Because again, I had not had, even though I had my great aunt, again, it was not my biological mother and it was not my biological father. And I did not, until last year and I started doing the work, I did not equate those strong feelings of abandonment with the PTSD that I was feeling. And so even to the point that I would self-sabotage relationships. Like I would just dump people. Like I would just stop talking to men. It's not like I dated any men who were abusive. Okay, no, one I did. I was low. But I would say 99% of the men that I was in a relationship with, they earnestly liked me. A few of them probably loved me. But I just found ways to leave them before they could leave me. Why? Because it goes back to the PTSD of my early childhood where I felt abandoned, where there was sexual trauma, where there was abandonment issues, where there's mother-father issues, where I felt like an orphan. Like I felt unlovable. Like that is PTSD. That's side effects of PTSD, which people don't talk about. And so, like anxiety from that. And so I would just be like, oh, I'm going to leave them before they leave me. Or I would choose people who I knew didn't mesh well with me. So eventually I would be like, I can't talk to them no more. Like type thing. I would purposely choose non-long-term people and be like, okay, I would have the intentions of not having long-term relationships. And then until I decided that I wanted to have a long-term relationship and I was looking for my forever mate, then this stuff popped back up again. Because I was like, no, they said I'm good on this. This medication helps this. And it did not help any of my behaviors. It did not change my mindset. None of that. I actually had to do the work on that. And so that is what is called shadow work. And that is the stuff that you keep in the shadow, or like they say, the bones in your closet. Shadow work. And so I had to open up the closet, and all this stuff that I thought that, I was healed from, I was not. I was just numb from the medication. And so what after doing the shadow work and things of that nature and coming down off that, what I realized is, for whatever reasons, which I don't even know if I'm going to find out or not, and at this point, I don't think it's relevant for me to know that my father wasn't in my life. For whatever reasons, I'm going on a private investigator search just to find them, because I want a whole complete picture of my DNA and where I come from and stuff like that. And plus, there's a lot of streets and businesses where I'm from that have my last name. And I always joke about it, but I'm serious. Like, I'm the only Black Conrad that I know. And so I want to know why. I find that interesting, and plus I love history, and I want to put together a complete family history. So that's why I'm going to find him. Because you just want to know. You just want to have a conversation about that. And so like for whatever reasons at that time, he was just not there. It was not possible. It was just not there. And again, my mother doesn't talk about it. Nobody in the family talks about it. So I'm like, on that side, I'm probably not going to get any answers from them. So I'll ask him and see what he says. And if he doesn't have anything to say, I'm just going to chalk it up to, hey, that was just one of them things that I had to experience to help somebody else who is experiencing that too. And I think so that is the case too, because I'm raising my nephew, and I can tell him that it's like, you know what, for most of my life I grew up without my mother and my father too. So we can relate on a different, oh, look at that message, so we can relate on a different level of that, and I can help him through his pain, and so that he does not have unspoken trauma or pain as well. And then as far as the sexual trauma, at first with the PTSD, I kept that with me because, again, because one, the family didn't talk about it, so I felt like it was my shame. And then at that time, being connected to the Christian faith and going like, and from all the way back to Eve, like, it's just your fault. Like, you as a woman, as a girl, oh, don't do that. You can't wear that. Don't do that. Don't put on real nail polish because you're Jezebel. If you wear these shorts, then you are causing men to look at you. You don't want to cause men to fall. Like, and so like I felt for a long time that it was my fault, that it was me that caused these men to want to do whatever they did to me even at that young of an age, before I was fully developed, before I even had a whole concept of what it is. Just coming from Christianity, it was my fault. I was Jezebel. I had a spirit of lust, and I don't even understand again how 6-year-old has a spirit of lust. Like, oh, it's just something. You was just born that way, and da 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 da. Like, really? But then again, leaving that and coming out of a Christian mindset and actually getting to looking at the different players in the field, it wasn't my fault. It was never my fault. I was not possessed or encouraged or invited that type of sexual perversion in my life. There was nothing that I could have done or could not have done. And as a matter of fact, it was because of my mother's negligence that I was put in a situation and put by people who had contact with me, like point blank. And then so once I realized that, I was like, oh, there's no, like, oh, like I feel it now of just freedom, just saying that and sharing that. Once I realized that, because I know that I am not the only one who's felt like that. And then again, coming out of a Christian household, Kojic, which I people may be upset when they hear this, but I liken that the Kojic denomination is like Black Mormons, or the FLDS. It's just like that. Except they're more secretive with it. It is just like that. So coming out of that, that's why I do the Escaping Christianity. Coming out of that, oh my God. It just made me feel so much better about myself. It gave me a healthy, and so now I have a healthy view of my own sensuality and sexuality that I'm supposed to have. Like, there's no lust in me. There's no none of that. None of that. No Jezebel spirit. I'm not a harlot. I'm not any of that. And I'm not going to hell. Type of thing. So like I healed from that, and so now I am able to have healthy, intimate relationships with the opposite sex. One, not fearing or thinking that every man that I come in contact with is going to attack me, because I had that thought. Like I would layer. It would be, and I've always been slim, and especially going to church, I would wear clothes 2-3 sizes, two or three times my size, because in the back of my mind, I'm all like, oh, if I wear something that fits, oh, I'm going to cause such and such to fall. I'm going to cause such and such to look at me. Or if a man gave me a compliment, I was like, oh my God, now I'm a harlot and I'm going to hell. And I would never wear that again. Like I always would layer up, because in my mind, I felt like I was the reason. And the reality is I was not the reason. I'm just living my life. I eat healthy, I exercise, I wear the right size clothes. It is not my fault. And like, I'm just not the reason if men have perverse thinkings and stuff like that. But until I started to detox and got that out of my mind, I felt like I was the reason. I felt like that if any man had any type of sexual thought about me, towards me, or expressed, I couldn't even take compliments. I couldn't even take compliments from any man, because I felt threatened, and I felt like a compliment was going to lead to them sexually abusing me, period. And I had dysfunctional relationships. And so once I got older, the only type of relationship I allowed was it was either or. It just couldn't be both, because I couldn't reconcile that I could have both until I got both. And I was like, oh my God. And then that came back up, and I had to deal with it. Because again, I wasn't being functional in the relationship where I could have both in one person. And so, which is totally functional and which is totally normal, which you're totally supposed to do, without thinking that I'm a Jezebel or I'm this or I'm going to hell and stuff. I'm so happy I got that hell concept put out of me. And like, I just detoxed from that. And so I got over that. I let go of the blame. I let go of the shame that other people put on me because of that. Like, and it's funny to me that the person, whether it's a male or a female, the person who has been sexually abused has to carry the shame, and people actually will go up to them as in my case, because well, what did you do? What were you wearing? Where were you at? I was a kid. Or even I was or for some people, they were teenagers. What do you mean? And so I've heard this even for teenagers, and it's just not women. It's just not male for females. It's males too. They attack the victim, the person who's been abused, and say that you've tempted. There's no way on earth that a 12, 13-year-old youth can tempt an adult. You can't make that make sense to me. But people will say that and will do that. Oh, you can't even make me believe at 16 and 17 or even 18 with somebody 10 years their senior, 10 or above years their senior, at that young of an age, that, oh, it's consent. No, it's brainwashing and manipulation, and it's still abuse. It is still abuse, because at 16, I wasn't having sexual intercourse. I was entertaining men in their 20s. That's perversion. That's not me being hot. That's me being allowed to be in situations with men 6 years older, my senior. And then being told that I'm a Jezebel and a harlot. And we're talking, and this goes to mental illness, because this is how this is how you are creating promiscuous women, promiscuous men, or the men and women who grow up with low self-esteem, no self-esteem, or who are just out there, because there's only so many times that the people that you trust, people that you grow up with, people that you call your leaders and your mentors, are going to plant a seed and water the seed, and then they wonder, if there's only so many times that you can call somebody a whore and water that seed. After you plant that seed, water that seed, fertilize that seed, and then that they don't come out to be a whore or a prostitute or somebody who sells their body or somebody who disrespects their body. Like, we don't talk about the people who planted the seeds to actually cause these mental illnesses and things of that nature, because it's an imbalance, and drugs don't help. They numb. These pharmaceutical drugs don't help. They numb, because what happens is you don't deal with the root problem. Nobody's dealing with the root issue. You're blaming the person with the mental instability. You're blaming the victim. You're blaming the person that's been abused. And then, since this country is majority Christian, You're calling them a sinner and saying that they're going to hell for something that they didn't do, for something that happened to them, but you're not giving them a way. You're not giving them a way to process it. You're just saying, go to church and ask for forgiveness. What do I need forgiveness for? I didn't do anything. And then you hush it up then you hush it, the family hushes it, and as a black person, we all heard that what happens in this house stays in this house, what happens in this family stays in this family. And then now we wonder why so many now we wonder why there's so much dysfunction in our families. We wonder why so many of our men, women, and children are committing suicide. Why now they're on drugs. While now, if it's not pharmaceuticals, because they don't trust doctors, they go to crack, they go to heroin, they go to PCP, they perked out all day. They leaning on syrup. They smoke weed before they pay their rent. Why? Because one, and this is still on mental. One, because they've been told don't feel nothing. Don't show emotion. Be hard. Be rough. Don't cry. Don't cry. Oh, you need to be a strong black woman. For what? For what? I am not. For what? For what? For who? Who says this? Men and boys don't cry, and for their kids. Stop telling your kids not to cry. Stop telling your kids, and this starts at a young age. I hear people all the time, don't cry, don't cry. Why? Their feelings are hurt. Let them cry. Even now, with my two boys, my oldest and my youngest, when I discipline them, I let them cry. I tell them to take it in their personal space so they can be as loud as they want to. And I tell them that this is a consequence for their actions. So go ahead and process it. And don't be mad at me and don't destroy anything. But you can feel how you want to feel, and you can express your feelings in your personal space the way that you want to do it. Why? Because they have to learn how to deal with emotions. Now, and we wonder why, especially for our black men, we wonder why they can't just do a dance battle no more. That they can't play the dozens no more. That they can't have a verbal confrontation no more. Everything is they got to go and get a gun. Why? Because they don't know how to express emotions and feelings with their words. Why? Because you tell them, oh, men don't cry. Men don't feel. Men don't do that. Says who? Says who? Says who? And then as mothers, as a mother, I say this too, as a mother, you should actually because we feel, and we should be the ones teaching our children, boys and girls, how to process their feelings, in a healthy way. But as women, we don't know how to process our own feelings. So how can we effectively teach our children this? And then we don't want to take the accountability that we don't know how to process our feelings correctly. And we raise children who don't know how to process our feelings correctly, and wonder why nobody in our community knows how to process our feelings correctly. And all we go out and do, and all we do is do drugs, drink, and kill each other. And what is it? I can't even think it. And feed competition among us, because we don't know how to process our emotions. Because one, we don't know how to feel what we're feeling, and we don't know how to process it. We still talking about my PTSD, because I had to learn this myself. Nobody really, actually, my aunt, because I can't say nobody. Because my aunt was one who let me feel things, and she always would say, think about it. What is the reason? She always asked me the reason. So she gave me the tools to process my feelings, even though I forgot about it a little bit as an adult, and especially when I had the medication, because I could just numb it and not process it. But it was killing my body. It was killing my mind. I couldn't finish anything. And then we wonder why we can't finish anything, because if we feel something new, or if we feel anything at all, it just destroys our whole world. That's what PTSD does. And then my next thing is going to be about anxiety. But that's what PTSD does. PTSD was the building block to everything that I had. Everything that I had. And it started when I was a kid, feeling abandoned by the majority of my family, having to be being put in positions where sexual perversion was happening, and then being taught that I can just smoke weed and drink my problems away at a young age. Like, that was the building blocks and this was all before the age of 12. So this happened like in my first, like, I say my first 10 years of life, because by the time I was 12, my first 8 years of life, by the time I was 12, I was done. I was done. I was done with this world. I was done with this planet. I was done with everybody. And I was like, F y'all, I'm leaving. Cause you had me to do this? Seriously? But the ancestors and the great one, they knew that I had a bigger purpose, a bigger cause, a bigger everything. They ministered to my soul, to my spirit. They reminded me what before I decided to come through my mother, in connection with my father, before I decided to be born into the family that I'm born with, what I had decided, what we had talked about, what my purpose and what my mission was. And so that was, I committed suicide, and I died, and I came back. And I didn't try ever again. I never ever thought about not being here and giving up ever again, even though it got hard, and I may have bent, and I may have had to crawl throughout sometimes in my life, but I never thought about giving up again after that. We're going to talk some more about that. But in conclusion, how I got over PTSD, I dealt with the trauma of being abandoned. That, again, it wasn't my fault. It has nothing to do with me. It is the issues, the trauma, the unresolved emotions and whatever that my mother and my father have, which have nothing to do with me. That caused my father not to be in my life. That caused my mother to somewhat be in my life, and put me into situations that were unhealthy, that caused unhealthy things to happen to me. And also, once I got rid of the construction of the oppressor's religion that reinforced that I was no good, that I was unworthy. And Christianity does that, because I thought about that. Like, you say that. You plant the unworthiness seeds through Christianity. You say that. I'm a sinner, and I am not. There's no possible way that I was born in. There's no possible way I was born unworthy. And at the same time, you're going to tell me that everything that God made is perfect and a wonder to behold. Oh, but once I come into this place, I'm unworthy. Seriously? No. And so between those mindsets, once I got rid of that, I was able to cry. And it wasn't so much that I was crying for me. I was crying because I felt like, man, my mother had to be going through a whole bunch of stuff and trauma herself to allow me to be put in those situations. She must have been going through some pain and stuff. My father must have been going through his own restrictions, his own things. And then for my family as a whole, not to want to acknowledge it and talk about it, they individually and collectively must be holding on to some things too. So I cried for them, not for me. Why? Because I'm free and I'm no longer bound by that. And so I can tell my story with a smile, with no venom, with no malice. Here waiting for if they want to share with me. If ever they feel to give me an explanation or a reason why, I'm open. But I forgive them. I forgive them for not taking me to therapy. I forgive them for ignoring my trauma, my trauma and my pain. I forgive them. because I know, like, I am connected to every ancestor, to every person in my bloodline, and I know who I am, what I am, and why I am here. I'm the designated curse breaker. I am the designated healer, person to talk about the stuff that nobody wants to talk about, and not just for my family, but literally for for people who look like me, for Christians, because a lot of people are hiding this stuff. And they mask it with drugs, they mask it with mental illness, but it's trauma. It's undealt with trauma, unprocessed emotions, family secrets. So I'm going to end it with that. So that's how I got over my Ptsd. Because my Ptsd, again, came from abandonment issues, sexual trauma, and the Christian church telling me I was no good and unworthy in the Jezebel. So once I dealt with those things separately, I'm happy. I no longer feel abandoned because there's separation between me and the people that are close to me. Right, I don't feel I don't feel loneliness anymore. If, like, my son is not here with me, my oldest son's currently not here with me. I don't feel like he abandoned me. No, I when my younger son leaves and does what he wants to do, I'm not going to feel like he's abandoned. If people separate themselves from me from any type of relationship, whether it's a friendship, intimate relationship, they move far away from me, like, I don't feel abandoned. I don't feel abandoned if somebody doesn't call me. I don't. It's okay. Why? Because they're living their life. And I am solid and secure in myself to know that at times I'm going to be alone and I don't feel lonely anymore. I used to be alone and I used to lie and be like, I'm alone, but I don't feel lonely. And that was a lie. That was a lie. And so the truth of the matter was I was alone and I felt lonely. That's why I used to keep people around me because I felt lonely and alone. Now I'm alone and I'm not lonely and I'm actually happy. I'm happy if there's people here. I'm happy, if there's people around me. I'm happy if there's people not around me. Sometimes it's just me and my younger son, and we're chill. And I used to feel some type of way. Oh, I'm gonna say this. I used to feel some type of way. He's 6. He's gonna be 7. Like, I used to feel some type of way because he would be like, because again, I would be teaching, and this is crazy, because again, I'm teaching him how to stand on his own 2 feet and how not to need other people's approval and how to be comfortable with being by himself and doing things alone and finding joy in it. And here I am, like, low key, my feelings would be hurt because he wouldn't want to watch. Oh, excuse me, because he wouldn't want to watch a TV show with me. And I'm all like, how you not gonna want to watch a TV show? And then he would tell me exactly what I would tell him. He'd be like, didn't you tell me that sometimes it's okay for me to be alone and have fun by myself? I just want to watch this show by myself. And literally, he'd be in the living room watching the show by himself. Why? I realized because when he in the show watching it by himself, he could rewind the same 30 seconds for 30 minutes and have fun and keep laughing on it. And if he watch it with me, I'm all like, no, let it play. So I was impeding on his joy and his fun. And I had the nerve to get upset. So now my feelings, again, this is growth. Now my feelings do not get hurt when he don't want to watch a show with me, because I realize he's comfortable. He doesn't feel abandoned if I'm not with him. If I'm not by him. So that reinforces that I am doing my job, that I am breaking trauma bonds, and that I'm not reinforcing the same environment, that I'm not reproducing the same environment that I grew up in. Like, he goes outside and plays by himself. I'm all like, yes, yes, yes. He's learning to walk away from people that are not doing him good and just be in the house and play with it. It just amazes me. So that is my mental health talk for today. I'll come back. The next one I'm going to do is on self-harm and where that came from again. Because again, all of these things are interconnected, interchangeable. And once I really dealt with root issues, um, the mental illness, the symptoms of, I started with one and literally it affected all the other diagnoses that I had simultaneously. And I didn't realize um till I started dealing with the emotions and processing that all of this is connected. And generally all of these mental illnesses are symptoms. They're just symptoms of root of trauma. They're all symptoms of trauma that we're not dealing with, and emotions and feelings that we are not dealing with. So let's deal and let's be accountable. Let's be accountable for our own healing. Let's be accountable for our own behaviors and our own actions, because there was a time though too when I was using my multiple diagnosis to be like, oh well, I'm just this, so this I can act this way. No, you can't. 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 You can't. You cannot. You cannot. So peace, love, and light, and I'll see you on the next one where I'm not being. And I got to change the podcast because I'm not being bipolar anymore, because I'm not. I don't know what to call it. I don't know what to call it. But like, share, subscribe, comment, and thank you for listening and watching.